then we don't share accounts. My name is Tessa Morales. I am 33, female, and I live in Portland, Oregon, in a narrow blue townhouse off Southeast 34th, where the sidewalk smells like wet pine after a rain. I work as an intake coordinator for a small physical therapy clinic on Hawthorne, and at home I keep a navy binder with tabs for banking, insurance, utilities, taxes, travel, and warranties. The first page is a laminated checklist that starts with smoke detector batteries in January and ends with file/archive in December. I like timers. I like receipts. I set alerts on my phone that buzz at 8:30 a.m. for bank transactions above $300 and at 9 p.m. for lights off and doors locked. My passwords live in a paper card file in a locked box, and the box key hangs behind the pantry door on a small hook labeled spare. My husband is named Jason. He is 35 and works in commercial roofing. He calls me steady and says the binder makes him feel safe. 2 years ago, we sat with a notary and signed a simple prenup that said anything we saved before marriage stays separate. Anything above $10,000 in joint savings needs both signatures for withdrawals. We wrote that line in plain words so we would never fight over it. I read it aloud and underlined both signatures in blue. The notary stamped it twice, and the stamp bled a little because her ink pad was too wet. I remember that because I wiped the edge of the paper and Jason joked that I was the only person who would clean a prenup. I smiled and said, "The habit keeps us calm." The habit keeps me calm when my phone buzzes on a Thursday at 5:42 p.m. while I am wiping down a treatment table and the alert says, "Joint savings transfer $4,200 to external account Boy Strip." The nickname is in lowercase and it makes my stomach go flat like a pan cooling. I breathe. I open the banking app and see 3 more same-day transfers at 9:16 a.m., 12:03 p.m., and 3:27 p.m., $3,300, $2,500, and $4,800. A total of $14,800 out since breakfast. The activity log says access from device JSM iPhone 13 at our home Wi-Fi. The note on the last transfer says, "Holding for deposit window." I look at my laminated page and at the small checkbox next to joint over 10,000 signatures, and I feel a quiet heat in my teeth. Not anger, more like focus. I text Jason and ask if there was a fraud alert, and if he is okay, he sends back a photo. It is a table at a sports bar. There are 5 pint glasses and a basket of wings and a paper napkin with the word kickoff. The caption says pre-game planning with the boys. He adds a winking face and a football. I type, "Can you call me?" He types back to back, then says, "It's all good, babe. I'll explain later." I say, "We need to review the prenup line and the account." He does not answer. I stand still and listen to the clinic hum, the front bell, the dryer thump, my own breath. I do not panic. I print the day's schedule for the closing tech, and I walk downstairs and clock out at 6:02 p.m. Outside, the street is damp, and a bus sighs as it kneels. I walk to the bar because it is 3 blocks away, and I prefer to look at people when I speak about money. The patio is a tent with plastic windows. The televisions show a replay of a game in Denver. I see Jason at a long table with his friends. He has his arm thrown over the back of a chair like he wants the chair to feel included. There are 2 women there I do not know. One wears a sweatshirt that says Bend, and the other holds a metal water bottle covered in ski stickers. I stand at the corner of the table and say, "Hi," and the tall one named Trevor says, "Hey, Mrs. Spreadsheet," and laughs. I index the laugh. I look at Jason. He looks back like he is glad to see me, but he is not getting up. There is a second chair next to him, but it is stacked with jackets. He touches the pile and says, "We're tight on seats." He says it in a joking voice, but the corner of his mouth is set. The server comes to drop a tray and asks if I need a chair, and Trevor says we're maxed. Sorry. Fire code. And people laugh again. Small and mean. And that is when I say my line. I say it quiet and it lands. Then we don't share accounts. The table stills like a picture. Someone says, "Whoa." And Jason says, "Tessa, come on, it's just a thing." And I say, "The transfers to Boy Strip are a thing too. $14,800 today." And the server blinks at me like I have said a number that belongs in a different building. Jason looks at me and at the people around him and smiles the smile he uses to smooth. He says, "It's a guy's trip in March. Bend and Bachelor. Last snow run. I'm fronting deposits. They'll pay me back." He squeezes my calf under the table like this is all light. I step back so his hand doesn't reach me. I speak plain. I say, "Our prenup says anything over 10 requires both signatures. You did not ask. I did not sign. My taxes are not a bank for your friends." He says, "Babe, this is not the place." And I say, "Correct. This is not the place to take joint savings either." The woman with the ski stickers says, "That's dramatic. It's just travel money." And I look at her and then at Jason. I do not raise my voice. I just say, "We will fix this now, or we will not be joint. Your choice." Jason looks at Trevor, then at his phone, then at me, and his face shifts a half-inch colder. He says, "Don't make a scene. Your binder stuff is not needed tonight. We've got this." He taps the jackets. Like that is a reason. And the server stands with a pen in the air and decides to leave without writing anything. I nod once. I feel the gavel drop in my chest. Small and final. I say, "Again." Then we don't share accounts. And I turn. The air outside is cold and my breath fogs, and I can see my reflection in the tent window. My face is calm. My hands are steady. I walk home and take the key from the hook behind the pantry door and open the gray fire safe on the top shelf. Inside is the prenup and the card file and the spare checkbook and a flash drive labeled taxes, Y1, Y2. I set my phone on the counter and start a timer at 00 because timers make me calm. I take a photo of the prenup line that says, "Both signatures for withdrawals above $10,000. I open notes and create a new page called 2025-03 Boys Trip. I paste the photo, I open the banking app and tap Report. I choose Dispute Transfer. I upload the photo of the prenup line and write in the box, "Transfers at 9:16 a.m., 12:03 p.m., 3:27 p.m., 5:42 p.m., $14,800 total. No second signature as required by account rules per prenup on file. Please place a temporary hold and review." I attach our notarized PDF from the safe and add my driver's license photo from last year. I click Submit at 008 on the timer. The app says, "Case 448211 opened. Temporary hold can take up to 1 business day." I do not accept 1 business day. I tap Chat with us. The agent's name is Kelly. I type, "Hi, joint account policy requires co-signature over 10,000. I did not sign. Funds transferred today to external account nicknamed Boy Strip. Please escalate for immediate freeze and recall." Kelly types, "I can see the transfers," and I ask for the fraud desk. She says, "One moment," and a blue box pops up with fraud specialist Armon. He asks for the last 4 of my SSN and the safe word we chose in 2023. I say 1,779, and I say medium cedar. He says, "Thank you, Ms. Morales." I see prenup on file. I am placing an immediate hold on the outgoing transfers. There is a 2-hour window for reversals to non-wire external accounts. We have 1 hour 15 left on the first. More on the later ones. Do you want to revert all? I say yes. Revert all? He says I need to notify the other account holder that a hold is in place. I say please do. And please note that further withdrawals require both signatures per attached agreement. He says, "Done." He gives me a case number and the hold record. I save the chat as a PDF to my desktop folder, 2025 Money Issues. I print a copy to the blue binder tab Banking. I write the time by hand, 6:31 p.m. I add a line in notes. Arm freeze, applied 1831. Reversal clock running. At 0019, the timer buzzes gently and I tap stop and start again. Because I work in small runs, I open Jason's flight email because he used our shared Gmail for travel and did not switch the calendar. I search March Bend and see 2 holds. One is Cedar Plus, Stone Resort Group Block, arriving March 14th. 5 rooms. Deposit $1,250 on his personal card ending 2019. Balance due February 15. The second is a rental house in Sun River. Host name Laurel. Airshare listing 8-bed A-frame. Non-refundable after January 15th. Deposit today $1,260 on the joint debit. I screenshot both and file them. I study the policies. The resort block allows free cancellation until 7 p.m. tonight if booked under the flexible rate. The rental house says non-refundable after January 15th, but today is October 5th. I check the clock. It is 6:34 p.m. I circle the cancellation lines with my finger on the screen like I am tracing. I open Airshare and log in. 2-factor sends a code to my phone and the code arrives as 552113 at 6:35 p.m. I enter it and open the booking. I read the cancellation window and it says full refund until November 15th. If host approval not yet received. Status says, pending host approval. I press cancel, and the app offers cancel request with message. I type, booking placed without required cosigner authorization per joint account rules. Please cancel fully and decline charge. I attach the prenup line and the bank hold chat PDF. I press send at 6:36 p.m. The screen says, host has 24 hours to respond. I do not want 24 hours. I click Contact Support and choose Policy Violation and upload the same 2 files. I request immediate intervention before pending converts to confirmed. The chatbot says, thank you. A human will review within 60 minutes. I breathe and accept the line for a moment because I can shorten other lines. I open the resort block email, click Modify Stay, and see the rate code FLEX 7 p.m. I click Cancel All and the system asks for a reason from a dropdown. I choose Other and type Reservation created with joint funds without authorization. I press Confirm. The page thinks for 4 seconds and then says, Cancelled. Refund to original form of payment. I screenshot and save. I call the front desk because screens are good but a voice is better. A man answers and says, Cedar Plus, Stone Resort. This is Jonah. How may I assist? I give the group code and ask him to confirm cancellation. He does. He reads the timestamp as 1838 and says, the card will reverse the deposit in 3 to 5 days. I ask for a receipt by email. He sends it. I file it. I write the time in my binder page. I start a 3rd timer because I want to mark the 40-minute point later. I go to the airline calendar. Jason did not book flights yet. There is only a price alert for PDX to RDM on March 14th. I click Remove Alert. I look at the bank app again and see the outgoing transfers are now marked. Hold pending. The external account buoy strip shows a routing number that belongs to an online bank. I recognize from ads. The account ending 8302 has a display name JM Roofing Travel. I take a screenshot and save it. I open public business registries and search JM Roofing Travel. Nothing shows. I search JM Roofing LLC. I find Jason's company and see a new DBA filed 3 weeks ago. JM Project Logistics, filed by J. Morales on September 12th. I scroll. I see a second DBA filed on the same day. Bend Brothers Travel. Owner of record is Trevor Moss. Address is Trevor's apartment on Alder. I screenshot. My palms get cool. I open our messages and scroll earlier in the week. I see a photo of a cooler with the caption test run for the mountain. I see a Venmo request from Trevor to Jason for 1 cent with the Note Boys Club check. It is a penny test to verify new routing. I saw it and did not see it at the time. I forward it to my folder and I feel that careful heat in my teeth again. It keeps me from shaking. It tells me this was not a casual mistake. It was built. I open the joint credit card app and set a travel alert block on Oregon lodging over $1,000 without a text confirmation to both phones. I set per-day limits of $400 on the debit card. I change the account nickname from Joint Savings to Joint Restricted. I add a note in the bank that says contact both signers for large transfers per prenup on file. I add my phone at the top of the contact tree. I click Save. I file a copy of the audit log where it shows my changes and the time, 1847. I text Jason and say, deposit reversals and resort cancellation in process. Prenup rules stand. Call me when you are ready to talk like a partner. He types back 3 dots and then nothing for a long line of minutes. At 6:51, he sends, Babe, you are overreacting. We had it covered. I reply, 2 signatures over 10,000. That is the line, he says. We were going to pay you back after we moved some vendor refunds. You complicate everything. I do not answer that because we are not in the same room, and I will not argue across a table I did not sit at. I make tea because hot water makes the space slower. I take the flash drive labeled taxes Y1Y2 and copy the prenup into a folder called 2025 Safety Net. I print 2 more copies and tuck one behind the fridge under a magnet and one in my messenger bag. I open our home insurance portal and check that I am primary on the policy and that the beneficiary lines match what we agreed to in January. They do. I open my separate savings and move $7,000 into a high-yield account I named Rainy Day when I was 26. I set a fresh alert at $150 for strange activity because smaller things tell you stories too. I go back to AirShare. The host still has not approved, but a support agent named Celine joins the thread at 7:03 p.m. and says, I'm reviewing your documentation. Can you confirm that the joint account debit is currently on hold? I upload the Armin chat and she replies, understood. I have escalated your case to prevent auto-confirmation. We will not charge the card while this is disputed. I say thank you, and I write her name in my notes with a star. I change my focus to our household view, because if people who call you extra say you are dramatic, it is often when you are 2 steps ahead. I take a breath and think of oxygen masks. I look at my calendar and note the dates we planned to visit my parents in April. I text my mom that I may move. The visit up, I do not explain. She replies, okay, honey, we'll be here. It is enough. At 7:12, my phone buzzes again with a bank message addressed to both account holders. It says, alert, outgoing transfers to external account ending. 8,302 are on hold, pending review due to co-signature rule. I know Jason received that too. I let the message do its work. At 7:19, my doorbell rings. It is not Jason. It is a courier dropping a shoebox from a vendor because returns always arrive when you are busy. I sign and toss the box near the couch unopened. At 7:23, Jason texts, I am coming home. Please don't lock me out, I reply. Door is open. He arrives at 7:31 and smells like hot sauce and beer and wintergreen gum. He stands in the kitchen doorway and looks at the binder on the counter like it is a teacher he does not want to face. He says, Tessa, it was a surprise, like a send-off thing before the baby comes. Trevor's girlfriend is pregnant. I say congratulations to Trevor's girlfriend, and I point at the prenup page and say, read the line. He does not touch the paper. He says, you embarrassed me. And I say, you embarrassed yourself? The server offered me a chair and your table said fire code. He says, it was a joke. I say, jokes that lock your partner out of a seat are not jokes. Jokes that pull $14,800 out of joint savings are not jokes. He says, "We always figure it out," and I shake my head and say, "No, we don't figure it out. We follow our rules. That is what keeps us calm." And then I say a sentence I planned in the 5 minutes between the tea and the printer. I say, "Here is what happens. The transfers will revert. The airshare booking will not charge. The resort is canceled. Any future trips you plan with joint funds will require both signatures or they will stop. If you want a boys' trip, you can use your separate savings. If you want to plan something with me, we will plan it." He begins to talk, and I raise one finger like I do when a patient at the clinic tries to argue with a copay. I say, "I am not punishing you, I am protecting us." He says, "You made me look small in front of my friends." I look at him and I say, "I am not your image coach, I am your wife." He looks at the binder again and says, "Do you have to keep all of that?" And his voice sounds tired, like he is almost ready to be a person, and then his phone vibrates. He glances down and his face shifts a 1/4 inch. I read upside down because I am a person who reads upside down, and I see a text preview from Trevor that says plans for Rome level payback are off. If she locks down the funds, I hold out my palm. He does not hand the phone. I say, "Read it to me." He flips the phone and the screen lights and I take it. His lock is still open. I scroll up. There is a group chat called Core Only, and I feel my cheeks go cool and still. The thread shows a screenshot of our joint banking balance 2 weeks ago. Not high, not low. Ours. There are messages where Trevor says, "Make it sting like the Rome seat thing. Remember when your cousin's wife sat in her car and canceled the venue, and the food and the string lights and walked away? Let's go lighter but send a message. We'll forget to save seats for Tessa at the kickoff and joke about fire codes. And then tell her. After that, the boys' trip is already booked. She'll swallow it." Jason replies. "She won't. She has rules," Trevor says. "Then we hide the transfers for 4 hours and show her it's done. She will calm down later. We'll buy her something." Someone else types. "Or just get the refund after the trip," and the thread goes on like that. Laughing, little wolf emojis, a cheap game, and at the bottom is the line I saw in the notification. Plans for Rome level payback are off. If she locks down the funds, I set the phone down and feel my breath return to the steady place. I do not raise my voice. I do not cry. I say, "Thank you for showing me the truth in writing." Jason begins to speak, and I hold my hand up again. One quiet finger. I say, "We are now in process. Do not contact the bank to lift the hold. Do not text your friends about end runs. Any counter moves will be documented." He says, "You can't scare me with your paperwork." And I say, "I am not scaring you. I am telling you the steps." And then, because that last message uses the word payback, and because my safety lives in my own competence, I reach into the safe and take out a compact recorder I use at the clinic for dictated notes. I press record and set it on the counter and I say, "For record, I am placing a voluntary pause on joint discretionary spending above $200 for the next 7 days while we review the prenup and our budgets. I have placed bank holds on unauthorized transfers today. I have canceled a resort block placed on a personal card and blocked a short-term rental from charging our joint account. I have filed documentation to support those actions." Jason says, "Turn that off," and I say, "It will help us remember," and I let the tiny red light blink. At 7:59, his phone dings with an email titled "Payment Reversal Pending" and another called "Group Block Cancelled." He looks at me like I am doing magic. But this is not magic. It is work, he says. "You don't have to go nuclear," and I say, "If you put dry leaves near a heater, you do not get to choose the smoke." Then the doorbell rings again. This time it is Trevor on the steps with 2 cardboard trays of beers. He lifts them as if he is doing me a favor. He sees my face and stalls and says, "We brought peace offerings." I keep my voice simple. I say, "You brought drinks to the wrong house." He laughs a little and says, "Come on, we got loud earlier." My bad. We just want to sit and talk. Jason moves toward the door and I step aside so that I am in Trevor's view, and I say, "No thank you." And I close the door. Trevor texts Jason in the same minute. The message pops on the lock screen. It says, "Don't let her mess this up. You're the guy." And I feel my jaw fix and then release. I set my phone on Do Not Disturb except for bank numbers and my parents and my boss. I turn the recorder off and slide it back. I tell Jason I am going to take a shower. And while the water runs, I let my mind lay out squares on the board. Not revenge, just order. I think about the next steps. I think about a public moment where paperwork speaks. And I do not have to. I think about how to make that moment arrive with a clock. When I come back, Jason is on the couch staring at the television screensaver that shows slow blue squares. He says, "Trevor wants to meet tomorrow to clear the air." I say, "Good. Set it for a place with receipts. Set it for a place where a manager can print a bill and a card reader can say, 'Declined.' Set it for tomorrow at 6 p.m. at East Bank Hall, because they like to see his face there after his sister's wedding." He blinks and says, "Why there?" And I say, "Because their policy tells the truth fast and we need the truth fast." He says, "You are scary." And I say I am orderly. And I type a message to Trevor from Jason's phone while he watches me type. I write 6 p.m. tomorrow, East Bank Hall Bar, settle up. And Trevor types back, "Perfect. Boys will be there. We are good." I reply, "Bring your card with the mountain sticker." I sleep that night like a person who set a timer and knows it will wake her. In the morning, I go to work and I set my desk at right angles, and I serve people who limp in on cold joints and leave a little looser. I keep my phone on my desk face down but with vibration on. At 10:14 a.m., AirShare support writes that the host declined the booking per our intervention, and the charge is canceled. At 12:02 p.m., the bank writes that 2 of the 4 outgoing transfers have been reversed, and the other 2 are pending. At 2:45 p.m., I receive an email from Cedar Plus Stone that reads, "Confirmation of cancellation and refund receipt, number 99,184. I print each and write the times in the margin like a nurse. My boss asks if I want to go home early, and I say, "I prefer to work until 5. At 5, I close the clinic and lock the back door and breathe the smell of rubbing alcohol and eucalyptus oil, and that gentle clinic yellow that stays in your hair. I walk the 8 blocks to East Bank. I arrive at 5:36 p.m. because I like to be early and watch. I go to the bar and sit at the end near the service station and order a soda water with lime and pay cash. I tell the bartender my name and that I will need the manager at 6:05 for a signed print. He nods because people who ask at the service end often do serious things. I text Jason that I am at the hall and to arrive at 5:55. He replies, "On my way." I pull the prenup copy from my bag and the reversals and the resort cancellation. I stack them in order with a binder clip and a yellow sticky note that says, "Sequence." I set a timer on my phone for 30 minutes. I do not press start yet because the clock has not begun. The clock starts when a person says a line that tells you where they think you stand. I wait for that line, like you wait for a bus. Calm, hands folded, my feet on the rail, just breathing. Jason walks in at 5:56 and sits next to me and puts his hands on the bar and says, "Thank you for coming." I nod and say, "We keep our appointments." Trevor arrives at 5:58 with 2 others from the table. He slaps Jason's back and says, "There he is." I look at his card wallet with the mountain sticker and I note the edges are frayed. He leans toward me and says, "We good, spreadsheet?" I do not answer that because he's not a person who earns my nickname. I say, "We are here to talk about money." He grins and says, "Relax. We've got seats for everyone this time. He gestures to A, high top behind us, and I turn my head very slightly so he can see me look at it and look back. Then he says, "The boys' trip is happening. We moved the money. It's already placed. Your little hold stunt won't stick." And he laughs and taps the wooden bar top. That is the line. The bus is here. I press start on the 30-minute timer at 6 p.m., and I feel a soft rush from my ribs to my fingers. I raise my hand and the bartender nods and disappears toward the office. Jason says, "Tessa, we can fix this without theater," and I say, "This is not theater, it is housekeeping." And then the bartender returns with the manager. Her name tag says Mariah. She stands square to the group and says, "Can I help?" I slide a paper across the bar that says House Account Agreement and point to Section 3, Payment Method Authorization, and I say, "We will need to settle the open tab at Table 7 before any new orders." And Trevor laughs and says, "We haven't even ordered." And I point to the screen at the service end where his sister's wedding balance sits at $3,412.90 from 2 weeks ago, a leftover they never closed. He blinks and says, "That's not tonight." And Mariah says, "We can't open a new group tab while an old one is unpaid by the same cardholder." He turns a shade lighter, and I feel the quiet click in my chest that means the gears are aligned. I glance at my timer. It reads 00:03. Plenty of room. I open my phone and tap bank. Case 448211. Request call. Within 1 minute, Armand calls and I put him on speaker. I say, "Hi Armand. We're at East Bank Hall. The transfers are mid-reversal. Can you confirm status?" He says aloud. Reversals initiated at 1831 prior day. 2 complete. 2 pending. External account ending 8302 is now flagged. Any charges attempting origin from that account will be rejected. Do you need a written confirmation to show a vendor? I say yes. Please email a letter marked immediate. He says I will send within 5 minutes. I say, "Thank you." I end the call and tap into AirShare. I show Celine's message that the booking never confirmed and will not charge. I place both phones face up on the bar like tools in a tidy line. Trevor snorts and tries to wave Mariah away. He says, "We'll settle that wedding thing later. Open us up." And Mariah says, "We're happy to serve after this is closed." And she folds her hands and people behind us start to watch. Because money pulls eyes. Jason swallows. I hear it. The sound is soft and low, and he says to Trevor, "Let's just pay and talk." And Trevor says, "It's under a refund. They're fixing a DJ charge." He looks at me like I am the DJ. I don't respond. I just look at my timer, 00:07, and I open a new app, the card network portal that East Bank uses, because I asked a month ago at my cousin's rehearsal and wrote the name on a sticky note and kept it. I type in our case number when the email from Armand arrives at 6:07 p.m. The subject line reads, "Confirmation, reversal holds and signature requirement." I hand my phone to Mariah and say, "You can attach this to the tab file so accounting sees it." She reads, she nods, she taps. She says, "Thank you, Ms. Morales," and sets the phone down between us. Trevor leans in closer and lowers his voice like the world cannot hear him if he speaks soft. He says, "Are you really doing all this? Over a trip?" I say I am doing this because rules were broken on purpose. He says, "You could have talked to us." And I tilt my head and say, "That is what we are doing now, with the people who can print receipts." He glances at Jason like he wants him to pull me away. Jason does not move. His hands are flat on the bar. His eyes are on the unpaid balance blinking at the service screen. I can see the exact numbers reflected in the metal rail. 3,412.90, a small echo. I check my timer. 00:10. I open notes, and add a line that says, "Public scene scheduled for 18:15 when manager returns with accounting." And then I smile once at Mariah in thanks for her steadiness. Because competence recognizes competence, she nods back. I turn slightly so I can see table 7. 3 guys have sat down and waved for menus. The server holds up a finger that means, "One moment, please." She has to clear something first. Trevor drums his fingers and says, "You're burning your marriage over appetizers." And I say, I am protecting my marriage from people who think our rules are appetizers. And I watch his jaw set as the lights in the bar reflect a thin stripe across his teeth. I note it without feeling anything but the click of my timer, 0012. I pull the prenup copy and slide it to Jason. I tap the underlined sentence. I do not explain it. He reads it like he is reading a line he has never seen, even though he has. He breathes and says, "I see it." And I nod. One small nod. Then Trevor reaches for the paper and I place my finger on the edge so it does not move. I say, "This is not for you." He sits back and lifts his palms like, "Hey, peace." But his eyes do not match his palms. They are measuring exits. He says, "We can go to a different bar." And I say, "You can. I will be here." And the weight of that sentence settles around him like a coat he does not want. He fidgets and looks toward the door. I look at the timer. 0015, halfway to the crest. I send one more message, this one to our joint credit card. A temporary merchant block for East Bank Hall under Jason's card profile alone due to unpaid prior balance linked to the same group. The app lets me do it because I am a primary, and we set those controls in July. I press confirm at 6:15 p.m. The screen says, "Change active." I write the time in the margin next to sequence. Mariah comes back with a small black folder and a receipt inside. She lays it open between Trevor and Jason and says, "We can break this up or run it as one." Trevor slides the folder back and says, "We were told the DJ overcharge would be credited." Mariah says it will, but we still need to close the remainder. She points to a line that reads, "Room flip fee, $1,600. Bar overage $970. Security hour $480. Other $362.90. Trevor shrugs and pulls out his mountain sticker card and hands it across. Mariah takes it and slides it into the reader. I glance at my timer. 0017. I do not smile. I do not look away. I let the reader talk in its own time, the little gray dots pulsing, the soft beep when the bank replies. The screen flashes the word declined and Mariah's face stays still. Because she has seen this before, she says, "Do you have another method?" And Trevor looks at the card like it has betrayed him. He says, "Try again." She tries again. The same beep, the same declined. She prints the slip that says insufficient funds. He pushes air through his nose and digs for another card. He hands a different one. The reader thinks. This time it says call issuer. Mariah hands him the phone number and says, "We can wait, or we can split." He looks at Jason and says, "Help me out, man." And Jason looks at me, and I look at my timer, 0019. And I set down my soda water and wipe the condensation circle with my thumb. And I say evenly, "We will not be using joint funds for this or for any trip." And my timer blinks 0020 and keeps going. At 0021, the timer hums under my palm like a cat, and I lift my hand and let it run. Trevor keeps tapping the empty folder with one finger like the number inside will change if he annoys the air. Mariah waits. The way a good manager waits. Her face open. Her feet planted. I say quietly, "Jason, your choice." And he breathes in and takes out his wallet and slides his own card halfway out and stops. He looks at me. I give him one small nod toward the paper with our rule underlined. He slides the card back in and folds the wallet shut. He says to Trevor, I can't put this on joint. And Trevor looks like he bit an olive with the pit still in. He laughs without sound and says, "Are you serious? Spreadsheet has you under glass now." And he turns to Mariah and says, "Fine, split it. Run 4 cards at $853.22 each." Mariah says I can split. She lines up 4 checks and places them in a neat row. I say quietly to Jason, "Use your own if you need to." He shakes his head once and sets his hands flat again. He is learning the shape of stillness. Trevor hands 1 card from his mountain stack. His friend hands 1. The other man pats his pockets and finds only a debit card that he says might not have the limit. Mariah starts the reader. Beep. Approved for the friend. Beep. Call issuer for the debit card. Beep. Decline again for the mountain sticker. Trevor's jaw tightens so hard the muscle steps forward at his temple. He says, "The DJ overcharge credit would cover this." Mariah says, "I can't apply a future credit to a past due. Policy is policy." And she says it in the same tone I used on the bank chat, even, clean, not sharp. My timer slips to 0024. I tap my phone screen and slide a fresh email across the bar to Mariah. It is from Arman at 6:22 p.m. Subject supplement. Joint signature rule enforcement. 2 lines that say, "Any attempt to push charges from the external account ending 8302 will fail. Note placed." She prints it and tucks it under the receipt like a small metal plate under a ceramic cup, unseen but holding the shape. Trevor's last friend says I can cover $300 and tries the debit again. It runs at $300 and stops. Mariah notes $3,112.90, still open in neat numbers, and says, "We can continue when you are ready." She does not move. She is the anchor in the room. At 0026, my phone buzzes with a new email from Airshare. Subject: booking cancelled. Full refund to original payment method. Case 773291. Celine writes, "We have declined the host charge request pursuant to documentation." I show the green check to Jason and then place the screen down without flourish. We do not gloat in bookkeeping. We log and proceed. Trevor's face goes a shade like old paper. He leans on the bar as if weight will lower the number. He whispers to Jason, "You're really going to let her tank the trip?" And Jason whispers back, "It's not her. We did this wrong." And in that sentence I hear either a new line being drawn or a last try at being decent. I take the sound as it is, and I nod a little to myself and check my timer. 0027, almost at the ridge. The 2 men at table 7, the ones who waved for menus, get up to leave. One glances at Trevor and shakes his head without words. The small human kind that has more weight than a speech. I do not smile and I do not move. I keep my hands folded and let the clock do the talking. And then Mariah, who has been quiet and near, leans forward and says, "We can call the house account guarantor on file if that helps." Trevor frowns and says, "There is no guarantor." And she lifts the small black folder and shows him a line he signed 2 weeks ago that says, "In the event of unpaid balance, East Bank reserves the right to charge the written guarantor below." He stares as if letters might rearrange themselves to his will, but they do not. The name in the blank is Moss Trevor, and the phone number is his. He says, "That's for wedding clients." And Mariah says, "And you were one, sir. Would you like to call now?" He does not answer. He looks at Jason again, like he will find a ladder there. Jason looks at me, and then at the prenup page, and does not move. The ladder is closed. My timer ticks to 0029. I pick it up and hold it in my palm, because I want to feel the last seconds on my skin. Trevor turns toward me one more time and says, "People don't do this." And I say, "People who sign rules follow them." I press the side button at 0030 and the soft tone sounds like a seatbelt ding. And I say quietly to Mariah, "Thank you. I believe the conversation is now between you and Mr. Moss. And she nods and says, That's correct. And then the bar door opens and two more of their guys walk in. They see the scene. Their faces shift from light to heavy. They stop. One turns around and leaves without a word. The other stays and stands by the wall like he wants to be a different kind of friend and does not know how yet. I slide my documents back into the clip. I take a photo of the unpaid receipt with the manager's note. I email it to myself and title it East Bank. Unpaid proof. 6:31 to 6:30 window. I pick up my soda water and put $5 under the glass. I say to Jason, I will be at home by 8. You can join me at 9 if you will speak plainly. He nods once. His eyes are wet, but he is standing still. I touch his sleeve with 2 fingers. Not a hug, just a marker that says we can still use our hands to do simple kind things like touch cloth without taking. Then I turn and walk out while a song changes on the speakers to a slow one that does not match the room. The night air smells like rain that has not arrived yet. On the sidewalk, I open my phone and move to the next square on my board. Not a trap, just a clean path. I open my separate bank. I move $2,000 from Rainy Day to a new subaccount I name Port Getaway. I set a rule that sends a push alert at any movement above $50. I open the Amtrak app and check Cascades 5:08 for Saturday morning. Portland Union Station to Tacoma at 8:20 a.m. $46 coach. I buy seat 15A and receive a QR code. I copy the code into my notes. I open the hotel site for a small inn in Gig Harbor. I like because the beds are good and the breakfast eggs are just salty enough. Room 203 is open at $179 per night for 2 nights. I book with my card. Confirmation. Tracker GH 22,431 arrives at 6:44 p.m. Included is free cancellation until 6 p.m. The day prior, I screenshot and file. I open a ferry schedule for Bremerton if I want water on Sunday. I favorite the 10:10 a.m. sailing. I buy a museum pass at $19 for Saturday afternoon because I like quiet rooms with glass cases. I add an entry in my binder under travel that says Port Getaway. $46 plus $358 plus $19 plus $24 meals estimate. Total $447. I write that number once so I can stop holding it in my head. Numbers sit better when they live on paper. At 7:02 p.m., AirShare sends a final notice that our dispute is closed in our favor. At 7:05 p.m., the bank sends a push that the third reversal completed. Pending now shows 1 transfer left. At 7:08 p.m., I get a text from Mom that says, Bring a sweater. It's breezy on the water. I smile at the screen and pocket it. I walk home with my hands loose. I feel my shoes touch the same cracks in the sidewalk I step over every week. The same maple root rise by the corner where the dogwood leans. My house key fits like it always does. The kitchen smells like lemon because I wiped the counter that morning. I set the binder down and pour water and sit at the table. I put the prenup copy on top where it can breathe. Jason comes in at 8:41 p.m. He closes the door quiet. He sits across from me and rests his hands open, palms up, like he is ready to hold heavy things. He says, I am sorry. I say thank you. He says, they wanted to make a point and I let them. I say, and you broke a rule you wrote with me? He nods. He says, I will call the bank and sign whatever ensures this never happens again. I say, you will call, but you will not ask them to lift the hold. You will ask them to add the dual signature rule as a hard flag. He says, yes, I will. He takes out his phone and calls Armin's number because I sent it to him with the case reference at 8:37. He puts it on speaker. Armin answers and says, Good evening, Mr. Morales. I have your case. Jason says, Please add the dual signature as a permanent note with block. Armin says, Done. Effective now. Jason says, Thank you. He hangs up and looks at me and says, I will also pay any fees that come from today. I nod and write Jason to cover any residual, signed 2045 in the binder margin, with a small line, a small contract you can see. He says, I will call Trevor and tell him to settle his balance on his own. I say, you will call Trevor and tell him not to contact me again, and that any mention of payback or group setups becomes a written record in our file. He nods, he calls. Trevor answers on the second ring and starts talking fast about Mariah and policies. Jason says, Trevor, stop. Pay your bill. Do not involve Tessa, and do not put my marriage in your chats. Trevor tries to joke that boys will be boys. Jason says I'm done, and hangs up. The silence that follows is the kind you can put your hand into and feel the space change shape. I let it sit for 10 seconds and then I speak. I say, here is what I need. I push a paper across the table that I printed at 7:29 p.m. while the kettle warmed. It is a small agreement with 3 lines. 1. We keep separate accounts as stated in our prenup. 2. Any joint purchase over $200 requires 2 signatures or 2 emails in the same thread that say yes. 3. Group events that involve our money require a written plan, 2 weeks. Ahead or we decline. Jason reads and says, yes to each. He writes his name and the date. October 5th on the bottom. I do the same. I take a photo and email it to both of us with the subject household rule. Signed. I file the paper in the binder and close the cover and snap the elastic. It makes a tidy sound, a click that fits the day. Jason reaches into his pocket and pulls out a folded slip. He smooths it. It is a receipt from a pawn shop. He says, I sold my snowboard today to put toward the deposit. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd be mad. I look at the number, $380. I say, I am not mad. You sold something that was yours? I am sad you did it to hide a rule you broke? He nods. He does not try to make it smaller. He just nods. He says, I will buy it back next month if it is not gone. But for now, I will clear the East Bank tab for my part tomorrow. I say, good. Do that by noon. Send me the receipt. He nods. I tell him I will be out Saturday morning and back Sunday night. He says, where will you go? I say north by train. I will walk by water and look at boats and come back with the air from the bay in my hair. He smiles, a small, tired smile that holds no defense. He says, text me when you board and when you arrive. I say I will, and I do, at 8:20 a.m. On Saturday, I stand under the old clock at Union Station that says 8:17 when it is 8:18, and I hold coffee in a paper cup that says Powell's, because I bought it on the corner. The platform smells like metal and wet wood. The train pulls in and the brakes sing. I find seat 15A and slide my bag under. The conductor scans my QR code and says, enjoy the ride. I nod and say, thank you. The car hums. We cross the river and the water is silver and flat, and a gull sits on a piling like a small gray judge at 9:02 a.m. The bank writes that the last reversal completed at 9:05 a.m. Armon emails a closure note that says, Case 448,211 resolved in your favor. Joint signature rule enforced. I forward that email to my binder email address so it prints when I get home. I watch the trees go by like soft felt pasted on a moving blue chart. At 11:12 a.m., I step down in Tacoma and take a rideshare to the inn. The driver has a small pine tree hanging from the mirror, and it swings like a metronome. At 11:44, I check in. The front desk prints my key in a small paper folder that says, Welcome Tessa in neat pen. My room has a window that faces the marina and a chair with a blanket that feels like somebody washed it with a good soap. I set my phone on the dresser and set Do Not Disturb for everyone but Jason and my parents. At 12:10 p.m., Jason texts, sent $853.22 to East Bank. Here is the receipt. He sends a photo and I file it. At 12:16 he writes, I called Trevor again and told him to solve his own life. He says, he said I was whipped. I replied, I am held upright by rules, not whipped. He sent a thumbs down. I did not reply. I smile at my phone and put it face down and go eat eggs that taste like salt and pepper and a small bit of smoke. I spend the afternoon at the museum. I look at a case with glass floats and read captions that tell me who tied the netting and when. I like dates that are honest. I walk the docks and count steps to make the hour feel slow in my body. I buy a $6 postcard with a picture of the Narrows Bridge and write my own address on it. I jot a line at 3:20 p.m. that says, "We follow our rules and we keep our seats." I drop it in a blue box because I like mail that surprises me. I sit by the water as the light lifts and the ferry pulls in at 5:02, and the horn sounds once, long, like a boundary you can hear. At 6:30 p.m., my phone buzzes with an East Bank email that says, "Balance paid in full." Thank you. Jason's name shows on the payment, not mine. I breathe in and out slow, and I let the sound of a gull fill the space between the inhale and the exhale at 8:05 p.m. Jason texts a photo of our fridge with a printed copy of the household rules signed and a magnet on top. He wrote, "Read me," in pencil and circled it. I reply, "Thank you." He writes, "I scheduled a meeting with a counselor for Wednesday 5 p.m. I say, "Send me the details." He sends the name and address and the form link. I add it to my calendar with a reminder at 3 p.m. and another at 4:30 p.m. I close my eyes early with the window cracked and the sound of masts tapping like little metronomes from the boats below. Sunday, I ride the ferry to Bremerton at 10:10 a.m. I stand on the deck until my fingers are cold and then drink coffee inside. I do not think about the Rome seat or the patio or the jackets piled on chairs like guards. I think about the seat I chose on the train, how it held me up with no noise. I think about how a chair is a tool and a promise. At 2:15 p.m., I board the return train and read a paperback that has neat chapters and ends before bedtime. At 6:02 p.m., I step into my house and the kitchen smells like tomato and garlic because Jason cooked a sauce he knows I like. He set 2 plates by the stove and a fork and a spoon. He stands and does not reach. He says, "I called East Bank and thanked Mariah." I sent her a short email that said we were wrong and we are sorry. I say good, and I hand him a small white envelope. Inside is a printed receipt that I typed on my home printer at 3:10 p.m. from the template we use for equipment purchases at the clinic. It says, "Psychological safety deposit, paid $0, non-refundable, due in acts." Not words. He reads it and smiles and puts it on the fridge with the rule, under the magnet that says, "Be kind, rewind," that I found at a thrift store. Monday morning, we meet at the dining table at 7:30 a.m. with coffee and the binder. We draft a simple budget for the next 3 months. Groceries at $120 a week, gas at $60, a small joint fun bucket at $50 that requires a yes from both of us by text before touching. We set calendar holds on the last Friday of each month at 6 p.m., called Money and Manners, where we look at statements together and then do something easy like walk to the park. We share a note that says words we will use when we say no to group asks. Things like, "Not this time," or "Our calendar is full," or "We're not spending on travel this quarter." We rehearse them out loud so they do not squeak when we need them. We practice saying, "I will think and get back to you by tomorrow," and we set a timer for that too. At 9:40 a.m., I email HR at the clinic and update my direct deposit to my separate account to simplify flow at 10:15 a.m. Jason meets with his bookkeeper and changes his draw so it routes to his own account and not the joint. At noon, he forwards me a screenshot that shows the new split. I file it and write noon on the margin. At 1:45 p.m., I set a new bank alert. Any nickname change on any account triggers a text and an email. No more boy strip. No more cute masks on real money. At 2:10 p.m. I write a small paper and tape it behind the pantry key hook. It says, "We follow our rules when we feel small, especially then." Wednesday, we go to counseling, a small office with 2 chairs and a plant that is alive. The counselor asks for one story that shows our dynamic. We give her the prenup line and the bar and the jackets and the timer. She nods and says, "Tell me when you each felt the most alone." We answer. We practice saying what we will do when a friend laughs at our rules at a table. We practice saying, "That is a no," and we keep practicing until no feels like saying chair and not like a fight. Next week we go again, and the week after that, we will see. A week later, I get my postcard with the Narrows Bridge. I forgot I wrote it on purpose. The mailman pushed it through the slot and it slid under the rug edge. I pick it up and read my line. We follow our rules and we keep our seats. I pin it next to the fridge magnet, and when I reach for milk, I read it without trying, the way you read the back of a cereal box because you are there. And a month after that, Jason sends me a screenshot on a Thursday at 5:42 p.m., the same time as the first transfer, but this time it is a text he sent to Trevor. It says, "Not joining the trip, closing out my part at East Bank today. See you after ski season," and Trevor replies, "Suit yourself, spreadsheet wins." Jason writes, "She's not a spreadsheet, she's my wife." I look at the screen and feel my ribs get a little wider. In February, I open my Port Getaway sub-account and move the leftover $1,553 back to rainy day. I rename the sub-account something soft, like picnic. I keep the train QR in my notes because I like it there. At the clinic, I add one more line to my laminated January page: smoke detector batteries, tax envelope labels, rule review by the 15th. And I smile when I check a box. The pen leaves a mark, and the mark is small, but true. I like small, true marks. In March, the week the boys were going to Bend, it rains in Portland, and the gutters sing, and the buses sigh, and the myrtle under our window opens tiny new leaves. On Saturday evening at 6 p.m., Jason and I walk to East Bank. Not as a test, just because the chowder is good and they make a lemonade that tastes like real lemons. We sit near the window. Mariah sees us and lifts a hand. She sets 2 waters and 1 black folder with a blank receipt. She says, "Glad to see you both." Jason smiles and says, "We came to pay before we order." Everyone laughs a little in the kind way that makes a room warmer. We order chowder and a salad and share both. When the check comes, Jason reaches first with his own card and Mariah runs it and it says, "Approved," and he exhales. I do not clap. I just breathe with him. A small, steady line between us. We walk home with our hoods up against a mist that is not quite rain. We pass under a streetlight that hums. He takes my hand and asks if I will show him the binder changes I made last week. I say, "Yes." And when we reach the kitchen, I open it to the tab that now has a small yellow dot next to banking that I placed at 4:22 p.m. on Tuesday. I show him the new rule sheet and the signed line. We stand there like 2 people reading a map we drew together. Not an art piece, just a map that gets us to the same house by the same door without stepping on the roots that lift the sidewalk. The pantry key hangs on its labeled hook, and it looks like a small promise, metal and simple, waiting for a hand that knows what it opens. Sometimes I think about the sentence I spoke at that patio table, the one that landed like a gavel. "Then we don't share accounts." I do not regret it. It wasn't a threat. It was an edge of a table we built ourselves so the plates don't slide off. When I feel the old sting in my teeth, I make tea and open the binder and check one box, even if the box is small, like change water filter or backup photos to the drive. Small boxes make big places feel less dark. On the first warm Saturday in April, we drive to the coast and sit on cold sand and eat sandwiches in wax paper and write 2 more lines we will keep. 1. We will not mock each other in public. 2. We will not hide money in cute nicknames. He writes them slow and I write them neat. And we both sign and date April 12th. We put the paper in the binder and I close it, and the elastic makes that tidy sound again. The click that says enough for now. On the night we pass the 1-year mark from the prenup notary with the wet ink, we stand at our small table. The same one where I laid out the pages. I pour 2 inches of seltzer into short glasses and add 3 blueberries to each because that is what we have. I raise mine and say, to rules that hold. He raises his and says, to holding each other to them, we clink, not loud, and we drink, not fast. And when I rinse the glasses and set them upside down on the towel, the kitchen light catches the water line and makes a thin, bright rim that looks like a boundary you can see and keep. And that is how I want every end to look. Not like a door slamming, just like a clean rim in a quiet room where the work is done and the night can begin.